AfriKili family, Global PAC nation. Today, Malcolm X, who unfortunately was assassinated in 1965, would have been 100 years old. So happy birthday, Malcolm X. But also, Captain Ibrahim Traore continues to be that spark that is lighting a fire across the global Pan-African world. He seems to be trending in the right direction, but still, the question remains. Will he end up being the spark that will light an unstoppable fire that will destroy system of injustice across the world? Or will he end up being another one of our African or Black revolutionary leaders that started with so much promise, but unfortunately were unable to fulfill their maximum potential? That is what we'll discuss in today's Global PAC show and more. So let's fasten our seatbelts, let's dive in, and let's get to work. All right, greeting AfriKili family and Global PAC nation. This is Tony Mfumusimba Kwamba Mangumbu. Thank you very much for those of you that are tuning in, that are watching the show, that are supporting the Global PAC show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who have not done that, before I start, let me just take a moment to ask you to please click on the subscribe button. When you do that, you're helping me tremendously. You're helping this platform grow tremendously. Without you, we cannot do it. Now, with you, I have no doubt that we will achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves in 2025. So subscribing helps tremendously, but also if you think that somebody else might, find value in the contents that we create, another thing you could do that will really, really be helpful is to click on the share button. When you click on share, you can transmit the content to people in your network you feel that would also benefit from this content. That also helps us grow tremendously. So thank you very much in advance for that. All right, today's show, very exciting in my estimation. Well, let's start with Malcolm X, or El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. Malcolm X would have been 100 years old today, so I wanted to start the show by acknowledging him and by wishing him a happy birthday. Obviously, Malcolm X is not with us anymore because unfortunately he was assassinated on February 21st, 1965, so about 60 years ago. And he was born in Omaha, Nebraska in May 19th, 1925, which is why he would have been 100 years old today. By the way, Omaha, Nebraska, I'm not sure if you follow the news, Nebraska got a first black mayor. Pretty big deal. I'll talk about it in some of the other shows. But yeah, so Malcolm X, last week in the last show we did, I brought you a lot of information about Malcolm X, right? I told you about his life. We spoke a bit about him, about his desire for unity across the world, unity in people of African heritage. But you know what? I found that until today, unfortunately, it seems that Malcolm X is not very well known. That's something I have noticed. And that's across the board, whether it's African American communities, whether it's people in Africa, or just people in the general Global PAC, the Global Pan-African community, or the greater, Pan-African diaspora. People have an idea of Malcolm X, but many times there's a bit of a lack of understanding. So if you're one of those people who want to find out more about Malcolm X, I couldn't recommend this book enough. Remember, last week I brought this book to you. I think you should be able to see it here. The autobiography of Malcolm X, Alex Haley. This is one of my favorite books. It's a go-to book. It's great because it's based on a lot of conversations that Alex Haley had with Malcolm X. They're not always the best of friends. Sometimes there's a lot of tension between them. But that book gives you a good, will give you a good perspective, a good understanding of who Malcolm X was. So I highly, highly recommend it again. Here, the autobiography of Malcolm X. You will learn a lot. And you will see that. So Malcolm X, why is he even called Malcolm X? Even that question alone, I found that some people do not know why he's called Malcolm X. Well, he was born Malcolm Little. All right. And so he was born in a family. His dad was a fervent a practitioner and a fervent follower of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, who was an individual of Jamaican origin, who created one of the largest black movement at the time. His movement was the UNIA. It was the Back to Africa movement. So Malcolm X's parents, or Malcolm later all the time, his parents were followers of Marcus Garvey. So Malcolm X, as a child, he attended many of those meetings, Marcus Garvey's meeting, where people were talking about going back to Africa, talking about a renaissance of black people, and so on and so forth. Later on, Malcolm X converted to Islam, and upon which he changed his name. So he got rid of his last name Little and just adopted the X. The idea here was that, well, he unfortunately, when black people arrived in the United States, enslaved Africans arrived in the United States, they were forced to abandon their African names. And they were given names by force, right, by slave owners. And so, as a sign of rejecting that history, Malcolm X decided to get rid of his last name, which was Little, and then it just became X. So that was in protest of that, just rejecting that name. And then later on, when he went to, he did a pilgrimage to the Mecca. A pilgrimage is when Muslims go to the Mecca, the holy site for Islam in the Mecca, and then you go and pray with thousands of Muslims from around the world and so on. So Malcolm X also did that. And on the onset of that, or after that trip, and also going through Africa after he came from the Mecca, he adopted another name. So he became El Hajj Malik, which I guess is a version of Malcolm in Arabic. So his name became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, which is why, as a matter of fact, Malcolm X's daughter is called Dr. Shabazz, right? Because her dad became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz again. So, which, by the way, in Arabic, it translates loosely to, the whole name, the pilgrim, Malcolm, the patriarch. So the pilgrim, Malcolm, the patriarch. It's kind of like a loose translation of what El Hajj Malik El Shabazz means. So yeah, I wanted to start the show with that. Malcolm X is one of my personal heroes. I mean, I just admire Malcolm X so much. He's obviously one of the most prominent racial justice activists and fighters who was unapologetic about his energy, just wanting freedom and equality for all humans, but obviously black people as well. And he's somebody whose ideology evolved drastically over time. Went to jail, came out, and then converted to Islam. Went to the Mecca, as I said, went to Africa, and then so whereas when he started, he was unapologetic against, just not wanting to associate with white people and so on, which I think many times when Malcolm X is painted as a racist, it is often based on some of those elements in the beginning of his life. For some reason, people want to disparage his image, just want to advance that, and totally neglect to mention that as he matured, as he went across the world and came back, his ideology actually changed a whole lot. So he went from somebody who did not want to associate at all with any white person, and somebody who was unable to see anything positive in any white person, to later on actually just becoming somebody who now took a position for human rights and understanding that racism is a plague that would destroy all souls. And so he evolved from that, and he towards the end of his life, he was very open to collaborating with people that were not black, people of any race. And so that was a tremendous evolution, I think, in his ideology, simply because, on this platform as well, racism is something that I will always reject, something we do not stand for. And I believe that humans need to be able to collaborate and work together and address common causes for the benefit of whole humanity. So yeah, so Malcolm X, get the book if you can. You will not regret it. You will learn a lot. He's a tremendous, tremendous figure, one of the greatest activists, in my opinion, to have ever graced this earth. All right, so there you have it. So that was for Malcolm X. So now let's move on to I would say the second topic, which I will spend a bit more time on this show. Just as a heads up, this show will certainly not be 1 hour. It will be much shorter. Remember, when we started the Global PAC, the idea was to keep the shows under 30 minutes, then 45 minutes, and I think in the last couple of weeks, it's been going over an hour. So today, it will certainly be under 1 hour. I will check myself. Some of you on your comments have accused me of wanting to go on and on. Hey, what I'm saying is interesting, right? I think just based on the feedback I'm getting, but I will try to be short. So that's my promise to you. It will not last an hour. It will be less. And feel free to let me know in your comments what you think, and also subscribe to the show, and so that you get the bell, you're notified, and you're part of this community, so we can have these exchanges, and in this community we can all grow together as we go forward. All right. So Ibrahim Traore, I mean, the energy is not coming down, right? It's like Ibrahim Traore seems to constantly be, at least from the time his name started circulating across social media and so on, there's just that energy that is still there until now. I mean, it seems like if you want any sort of attention, and some people are abusing that, just put the name Ibrahim Traore on your social media, and that will guarantee some form of attention. So there's just a lot of energy going across Ibrahim Traore, right? And for good reasons, I should add, right? I mean, he is that spark. He's that person that is really creating, that's bringing a lot of momentum in the cause of unity in the Global PAC. Global PAC, again, means the Global Pan-African Community. He is causing a rallying cry across the Pan-African cause. So that energy is just phenomenal to see, because we can all agree that different Global PAC communities, or different communities of people of African heritage, that's what I call the Global PAC. So, the Global African Diaspora, but also on the African continent. But different G-PAC or Global PAC communities have very similar aspirations, right? It's about elevating the condition of people of African descent and Black people wherever they are. Whether it's in the United States, you would agree that the activism and the fight, right, the longing of African American and Black communities in America is to eradicate racial inequalities, is to correct many of the mistakes of the past, many of the systemic racism, right? If you look at some Caribbean communities, there is that desire to not only eradicate the legacy of slavery and so on, but for communities to thrive, to come out of poverty. So again, elevate communities. You look at different African communities, aspirations are similar. It's about elevating, right? Elevating the lives of Black people. And so somebody like Ibrahim Traore seems to be that symbol that people are clinging on. He's that rallying cry that people find easy to associate with because of his messaging and so on and so forth. Well, the title of this show, if you recall, what did I say, is why global Pan-African unity is more crucial than ever. And we will use Ibrahim Traore to make that argument, make the case for that, as to why global Pan-African unity is more crucial than ever, as crucial as ever, or is an emergency if you want. That maybe even puts an emphasis on how important that is. I think that if you look at the world, like what's happening right now, you have to agree there are tectonic shifts that are happening, right? There is a global shift in the global geopolitical stage. With the arrival of Donald Trump, for example, I mean, things are changing dramatically across the world. New alliances are being shifted. There is, I mean, just look at, for example, earlier today I was following, there's that whole deal that was done in Europe, for example, with the Brexit, whereas the UK wanted to separate from the European Union, and so there was a whole campaign, and they did it. Guess what? Now that Donald Trump is back in power, Donald Trump is advancing his America First policy. Europeans and the British are realizing, hey, wait a second, we actually need to work together to be able to face the challenges that are being posed by Donald Trump in the White House, who again is shifting a lot on the geopolitical stage. So there was a meeting, whereas the EU and Great the UK came together to try to see how they can work together. Look at what's happening with Russia. Pre-Trump, Russia was becoming almost, I say, persona non grata. But people realizing that Trump is causing so many enmities around the world that Russia now is becoming, again, seeking, signing new alliances left and right. China is the same. China was being isolated during the Joe Biden administration. Donald Trump comes, and now China is resuming alliances, even with countries like, Vietnam and so on. So Donald Trump is causing major shifts, with his America First policy, with his global trade wars, and so on. So we're seeing changes across the world. But what about the Global Pact? What about the global Pan-African communities? Again, Global PAC is the Pan-African diaspora across the world, but also different African countries. What about the Global PAC? Are we taking advantage of this shifts that are happening in the world to be able to position ourselves in a way that will really benefit our communities? Because I believe this is no longer the time to continue with business as usual, all right? Clinging into old systems that have not served our communities well until now. This is the time to really look at it with lucid eyes and really assess coldly what is unfolding on the geopolitical stage and be able to position ourselves in a way that will end up benefiting our communities in the long run. There are opportunities that we cannot miss, that a lot are created with what Donald Trump is doing to really destabilizing a lot of the alliances and a lot of the world order on the international stage. So somebody like Traore is essentially coming in the middle of that. Okay, Traore is, in a sense, he is posing a lot of threats also to, with his revolutionary message, with his desire to boot out, for example, the traditional West powers in his country of Burkina Faso, seeking different alliances with going to the east, to Russia and so on. So he is posing a threat to an established system, which is why, if you've been paying attention, yes, there's a lot of energy around from many black communities going towards Ibrahim Traore and what he symbolizes. But if you look at a lot of traditional media outlets, right, coming from your traditional West, more and more you're starting to see heavy criticism coming out about Ibrahim Traore. You start reading things like that he is an autocrat. He's not advancing democracy. He's committing human rights abuses. His soldiers are killing innocents, especially with the attack that he conducted with drones. We're just saying maybe there's an estimated maybe 1,000 jihadists or extreme terrorists that were killed in the north. People are saying, civilians are killed. But you're starting to see more and more news stories come out. There's an effort to try to diminish the fire that's being burning, around Ibrahim Traore from many of the traditional media outlets. And that should tell you right there that he is not being seen as a serious threat to the established order of things. Even though, as I began this talk talking about how the United States, with its America First policy, is destabilizing a lot of the world order and creating new alliances to be created, you still have a certain traditional West bloc that understands that if Traore was to succeed with his agenda, and if that agenda or that ideology ends up spreading across Africa and then the entire global PAC world, that traditional West Bloc order understands that it will be its downfall. Because it clearly, until this day, a lot of the established West really still benefits, right, from a certain exploitation of resources and so on from the African continent and other parts of the global PAC. So a Traoré is, again, posing a really danger to that system. But the thing is, I hate to say this, Traoré, yes, he has definitely the making of a great revolutionary leader. Before we had people like Thomas Sankara. So we've had different figures. I mentioned Malcolm X was also a great figure, although he was never a head of state. We've had great revolutionary leaders. We had Marcus Garvey. You had Kwame Nkrumah and so on. But unfortunately, many of those revolutionary black leaders that wanted to attack the status quo, they wanted to shift the balance of power, many of them, unfortunately, never really were able to maximize their potential and see the ideas all the way to full implementation or fruition. And there's many, many reasons for that. But I think one of the main things is that, unfortunately, population in the global PAC had failed to really come together and work together either within singular countries or under international coalitions, or we just have not been able to form solid enough coalitions, right, that will allow us to attack the status quo and provide a counterbalance to establish systems. The lack of coalition creation, that is one of the main reasons. And which is why, even if I just focus on African countries, it's not by accident when you have, for example, leaders that stay in power for 30 plus years, 40 years, yet the West traditional media outlets don't criticize them, right? And these leaders many times will come and say, oh, well, we have a democracy in our country. They organize rigged elections to get reelected at 90%, 99% of the voices and so on. And yet they continue getting message of support from European countries, sometimes the US and so on, because they're protecting the interest of foreign multinationals and your traditional West. But the population has been unable to really append these systems because of a lack of strong coalition creation. And so it has allowed this system, this predatory system, to continue advancing and eating up at the well-being of people. So that has been one of the main downfalls, the lack of coalition creation. But it's also all about timing, okay? Because I think the conditions and the environment have to be ripe. And so that you have an event or a person that comes up and then becomes a spark that will light that fire, that becomes an uncontrollable fire. And I think it is in situations such as those that you need new leaders to emerge. And so Ibrahim Traore, really, in terms of timing, the time is ideal. This is the perfect timing for somebody like Ibrahim Traore, and then for that ideology to succeed. Because again, I mentioned the Donald Trump's arrival on the international scene is creating gaps that were not existent until now. Because you had a fairly unified Western blocs. But Donald Trump is breaking that up. So gaps are being created. So this is an opportunity that should be seized in an intelligent manner. But it is, as much as I like Traore, as much as I want him to succeed, as much as I believe in the message of self-determination, message of self-sufficiency that he's advancing, as much as I like all of that, I also understand that he's only one person. Ibrahim Traore will not solve the inequality issues in the United States of America for African American communities. Ibrahim Traore will not solve issues for Afro populations in the Caribbean, right? Ibrahim Traore will not solve issues for other like poverty issues and so on in other African countries. He will not. He has enough on his plate to deal with the issues in Burkina Faso. I mean, that is an evidence. I hope, as there's immense emotions out there, I hope my brothers around the world, whether it's Jamaica, the US, you just don't believe that Ibrahim Traore is this spiritual figure who somehow, by special powers, will end up changing the situation where we are. I mean, no, that's fantasy. That will not happen. Nevertheless, what Ibrahim Traore is providing is this great spirit, that's the spirit of unity, because that energy that is being created around Ibrahim Traore is allowing people across different Black communities to see that it is possible to come together, work together under coalitions, and then decide on attacking common issues and then working together. That is the spirit that Ibrahim Traore is bringing together. And then by him standing against the established powers, he's showcasing that strength is there. That to me is the great opportunity that I see here. There's a spirit of unity that is being catalyzed by Ibrahim Traore. And it is not necessarily for all he's doing. As I talked about the timing, life has its way of operating. There's things like Ibrahim Traore came on the face of it. For example, what he's doing versus what an Assimi Goïta is doing or what Sankara has done before and so on. So it's not as if what he's doing has never been done before. But so there's a lot of things you cannot just control in life, right? There's a certain dynamic, but whichever way it happened, the reality is that today, Ibrahim Traore is now is elevating as a symbol of hope, a symbol of unity for in the entire Global PAC, the entire global Pan-African communities, which is community of people of African heritage in the United States, the Caribbean, across the Caribbean, Jamaica, Haiti, you name it, Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, United States of America, different African countries. He's just now elevated in a place. He's now a symbol that is way beyond his initial cause. And by virtue of him being elevated that way, people are assembling, and because they have their eyes on that symbol, they're overlooking their differences. And so you're now seeing unity, people from different Global PAC communities coming together regardless of their different origin. And so that opportunity, again, is the one we must seize. But wherever we are, in order for this to translate into something meaningful, it is really up to organization. Remember last week or maybe the week before, I talked about the necessity of movements organizing intelligently, right? To take advantage of the current circumstances and then be true agents of change. So here you will need organizations because our emotions are great, but those emotions alone, what will happen when those emotions go down? If there's nothing else we did other than feel good because we looked at a speech from Ibrahim Traore or because we went out in a march, what will come out of that? So we need to organize in order to take advantage of what's happening right now. And I'll tell you what, others operate that way because even Donald Trump, if you look at, the advent of Donald Trump, I'm willing to bet that Donald Trump could not come up with any policy to save his life. I am convinced about that. He's not somebody who reads. He couldn't care any less about the minutiae of policy making. I am convinced about that. Except maybe the policy of, ensuring that he has enough pressure coming from his shower. Remember when he signed that executive order? He said, well, I like taking showers, with a lot of pressure. So maybe that's a policy he came up with, signing an executive order so that when you flush the toilet, there's enough pressure on the water, or, when he takes a shower, there's enough water coming from the shower head. But the guy could not write a policy or come up with a coherent policy to save his life. I am convinced of that. He does not have that in him. However, there are very smart people, and there are people that plan, that understood early enough that Donald Trump is that spark that is gradually turning into a fire that will be unstoppable. So there's people who planned around that, started creating agendas around that, so that as Donald Trump is in office, they utilize that movement. Because Donald Trump has turned into a serious movement. You better believe that is the case. But then you look around, look at, for example, this project 2025 that we've talked about many, many times. Obviously, that's not Donald Trump that came up with that $900 page. Well, what am I saying? $900. The 900-page document. But you have people within that far-right think tank called the Heritage Foundation. They read the sign. They saw what was happening. Started thinking, okay, so if Donald Trump is in office, how can we ensure that this far-right agenda can be implemented? They started thinking, they started designing, they started looking at policies so that they would utilize the symbol, the strength, and the aura of the Donald Trump movement to ensure that the changes that they're pursuing would be implemented in society. So a radical changing of the American political system. Their intent to totally consolidate power at the executive branch. They had an agenda in place, and now Donald Trump is there, and that agenda is being implemented. Look, I just saw a project I came across. It was called Project Esther, still by the Heritage Foundation. So you have people that are thinking policies. They said we need to make sure we turn the pro-Palestinian movement into terrorism by expelling people. Anybody who's associated with that, students and so on, we deport them. And so there's an agenda in place, and those people are helping pass policies that are changing the society to their liking, their image. So when it comes to the changes that we want to see happen, it cannot stop with just us feeling good because Traore is a symbol of revolution. That is not enough. It has to go beyond that. All right? It cannot be just because we go out and we protest and that we feel frustrated. And when we watch a video of Traore, we feel like, yes, we're vindicated. Go, stick it to them, Traore. It has to go beyond that. We need to organize within coalitions. Think this through. And no matter what we are aiming for, there needs to be some policy agenda at the end of that. Because whatever society in which we live are regulated by laws. You need administrative also measures and rules to regulate how people live together. And so if we want our societies to change and all those system of inequalities, the way we see them, to be eradicated, at the end of all this positive movement that is inspired by Traore, we need to figure out how eventually we'll have laws within our societies that will benefit the agenda. If that is not there at the end of the day, we risk seeing Traore, unfortunately, fizzle out, and this great energy that we felt across the Global PAC world, from the Caribbean to the United States, different African countries, Latin America, unfortunately, that fire, that spark, that is turning into a fire, will end up fizzling out. So we need that smart, long-term thinking here within coalitions. And I know some efforts already being done. This platform is one of those as well. Understand that our desire is to organize in that way. It is not about being on YouTube, presenting videos and us feeling good, feeling that our soul is fulfilled. That is fantastic, but we need to go beyond that. All right? And also understand, let's not just fall. I'm seeing a lot of manipulation also. I'm just going to call it the way it is. going across social media. So today, there's always some names that are trending, and so I'm seeing a lot of content. Traore this, Traore that, Traore this, Ibrahim Traore this, Ibrahim Traore that. Because again, today all you have to do is put a thumbnail with a picture of Ibrahim Traore, and you're gonna get some attention. I'm also seeing the response I'm getting from all these videos from Ibrahim Traore. I mean, it's just he's trending right now. That's just the reality. Nevertheless, let's not fall. Let's not be manipulated also, but because there's some people that are just seeking that attention. That is the reality. There's a lot of people that are wanting to get to influencer status that will use whatever trend is there to gain the attention, but there's nothing substantial to help communities get better at the end of the day. This has to go beyond that. This is such a crucial time. There's such an alignment on the international stage as to if we have intelligent, organized action, strong coalition building, we will be able to see how the flame of Ibrahim Traore is really catalyzes change, meaningful change across the global Pan-African communities. Again, this platform offers one of those opportunities. If you've not done so, I really ask you to go and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe on this channel, become part of this platform. Let's grow together as we're moving into that think tank mode, into agenda building mode. We can all grow together. This is collaborative effort is needed. And we'll continue obviously supporting our people from Burkina Faso and all together wherever we are, continue elevating Ibrahim Traore. And definitely he's somebody who must succeed also in his agenda. He's a true revolutionary guy who has gone beyond the scope that he started. That's just his calling. Sometimes the universe decides to put you in a place. He is that guy right now, and he needs he needs to be supported. All right. Oh my, 37 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to end up today's show with, as has become the norm on our show, as you know, I will end up with a quote by none other than Malcolm X, since we've talked a lot about Malcolm X. So this is the quote that I have. All right, so here Malcolm X says, "I am for truth, no matter who tells it. I am for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I am a human being, first and foremost, and as such, I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Malcolm X. That is just so fantastic. He said, "I am for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." That's from the person whose birthday we're celebrating today. Remember, Malcolm X would have been 100 years old today. And so that quote encapsulates what this platform is all about. All right, so this is it for today, folks. Before ending again, let me remind you to please click on the subscribe button. That will help us tremendously. Another thing you can do that will help a lot is to click on the share and share the content with people that you think in your network that will also benefit from this. Those two actions that are very quick will be tremendous help for this platform. If you're ready, subscribe and you're part of this. Thank you very much for your support. Without you, we cannot do it. All right, as we're closing, remember, as I like to say, we are a beautiful people. We are a special people. We are a strong people. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Above all, we are the Global PAC. So until next time, this was Tony Fumu Simba Kwambamba Ngumbu. Peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. And remember, we are the Global PAC. Thank you very much, and let's get to work.